Welcome to Picture the Professor, the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. This is college football week 11, back delayed a day because of the start of college basketball season. Back here with usual college football expert cousin Jared, and then as special guest here today, we have Seth from BTB Analytics joining us as well, giving us a new perspective, some different conversation. Seth, what would you like to tell the people about yourself and or your company and why we should listen to you?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks so much for having me here. Super psyched to get to talk about some college football. Similar to you guys, I've been following some of your work for a while now, and then it's just bringing that actual statistical methodology and true scientific kind of brain and aspect and methods to sports betting. So I think we kind of share that passion and skill there, and I think that's what we do at BTB Analytics. We want to try to give people true edges, and that looks a little bit different than some of the touts you may see running around the internet. So I think we're going to have some good discussion today, and again, super excited to be here.
Yeah, we talk about like the true edges, and I love that you said that. I was actually talking to someone today about the kind of that same idea of, when you start off sports betting, and some of you viewers may be kind of more in this. I feel like the first sports bet I ever made was something along the lines of like, I think this team's gonna win, right? And that's all you think about. And you think about these like really high level things, but how do you get to the point where you actually get to this is going to make the difference between in the long run being profitable or not profitable? And when we talk a lot about those types of concepts, of course, and I think that's a great, kind of a great thing to hone in on and be thinking about as you're making your bets, right? Do I have a true edge here, and what do I really know about this and whatnot? So we'll try to help you quantify that, viewer. Of course, week 10 recap was fantastic, as you can see on screen. All green is a lot of fun. Back up to the season for an 8% ROI. Cousin Jared, we've made over 300 picks so far this season. So I don't know if that's should we be proud of that or not? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The college football though, the season just goes by so fast. Look at the college football sheet, and it's like, oh my gosh, we've only got like 4 or 5 weeks left in the season. So let's just enjoy it while we can. Let's see if we can make 300 more picks in 5 weeks.
Might be a little bit much, 300 more picks. Again, if you're interested in joining us over on Dub Club and making all that money that we made, we had 20 and 5 Saturday people. So everybody in there was making just oodles and oodles of money. The Honor Roll All Access package gets a bunch of goodies. And again, we are still for this week, last week that we're doing this, you get the old pricing with the link in the show description. That'll save you a ton of money. Get in before that old pricing disappears. We also have, of course, sport-specific packages. And then, of course, some quick reminders about the model called a sideline. It's a player-based model. Ratings reflect the current roster. Average grades 100. Higher implies more points. Offenses want to be higher. Defenses want to be lower. We always say it. Anything is a good bet at the right price or number, and that's one of the things we're going to discuss here. We like to talk about key numbers, of course. Model gives the ABC love like lean. We choose the plays. There are a handful of weekday games as usual. We've got some midweek action. We have a top play for one of the MAC games, another play that we do really like, but we're going to skip to Friday for Cal and Wake Forest. I don't know about you guys. I'm at this point just confused and kind of assuming that this was a Big Ten game being on a Friday night. And with all the conferences like moving around, I'm like, Cal and Wake Forest in the Big Ten? Sure. I have no idea anymore. Because we've talked all season long about these Friday night Big Ten cross-country games. And I guess it's the ACC, that's what we'll call it, at least for this year, is doing the same thing now, giving California a cross-country road trip to the great state of North Carolina, where they'll play Wake Forest. We've got this as Wake Forest hanging in there, losing by an average of about 1.5. That makes the 7 that we can get extremely valuable. A great pick, one of our top plays. Cousin Jared, what are your thoughts on this one?
I would also say shop around. You might get lucky and find a 7.5 out there. If you probably for a little bit more juice, but if you were interested, made you feel a little better, you could probably find a 7.5. This one is a little bit strange to me because Cal did have a good road win at the beginning of the season, going on the road to beat Auburn. You can question how good Auburn is, but I mean, that was still a good win for Cal. But since then, in conference play on the road, they lost to Florida State, which looks worse by the week. They lost to Pitt. They lost to North Carolina State. Now, all those games have been close. I will give you that. They've got 3 losses, but all close games. I don't think this game's going to be any different. I think it's going to be close. And so if you're telling me it's going to be a close game, give me 7 points with the home team against a team traveling across the country. Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yep. Seth, what do you think?
Yeah, our model we're much more close to the market on this. I think market open around 7. It's still hovering there. Jared, to your point, right now you can get a plus 7.5 over at Bet Rivers for minus 113. So I would imagine that bumps you up there in some EV. But
if you haven't been limited there yet, I mean, they let you breathe and all of a sudden
those
it's like
that can get down there.
Yeah, the most you can get down. This is $7.22, and you're like, well,
there's FanDuel's got a minus 120 plus 7.5. So
I wouldn't
maybe it's
I wouldn't pay
more
the
rich.
10 cents.
Yeah. I will point out. I think our forecast is a little bit more just in the market, so wouldn't lean one way or the other. But one stat that's in our model that I think points in your direction here is something where I don't know if you guys quantify something called echo rate, which is basically the proportion of drives that get to the 40 or better. And the one thing that I thought was pretty interesting here for Wake, defensive echo rate. So basically their defense is allowing teams to get to the 40 or better. They're actually 51st in the nation in allowing teams to not do that. So versus Cal 79th. So I think here, and to your point, if you're looking for a close game, you're going to want to be not allowing drives. And both of these teams are just abysmal at finishing those drives. We're looking at Cal 105th and then Wake 107th in offensive, what we call points or points per echo. So, yeah, I can see a close game here. I tend to, show a little less value than you guys, but I can definitely see how this can go that way. This is a coin flip game, and you guys obviously show the edge. So I can envision it.
Yeah, and I think that 7, I don't know about y'all, for me is kind of pivotal here, right? You can definitely land 6. 6 is more common in the NFL with the more likely of going for 2 points and because of the longer extra point. But for me at 6.5, it's like the model would still say there's an edge, and it's maybe worth spring, but it's not. The value's really at 7, and so that's kind of my thoughts. Because Jared, we've got this as Wake winning 46% of the time. Are you dabbling a tiny bit on the money line if we think it's a close game?
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. If it's 7, I'm taking the 7. I'm not splitting my bet at that point. If it was 6, if it was 6, maybe I would split it. But 7, I just go all in and getting the touchdown.
Yep. All right. We have another Friday game covering 2 Friday games. This one actually is, I think, the Big Ten game. We'll go with that. Iowa traveling halfway across the country to UCLA. UCLA, a team I kind of feel like we left for dead early on. We faded them hard against Hawaii. We faded them hard against Indiana. And maybe it's just that Hawaii and Indiana have been better than people realize. Maybe UCLA's actually starting to show something of late, looking a little bit of life here. We obviously love Iowa. We've been high on Iowa, and they've been good to us for years now. But we're going to actually talk about the total on this one because, I like Iowa. I like the way UCLA's been playing. We're going to go over 44.5. I'd love a 44, but Iowa's been kind of an over team this year. Their defense is good, not great. And guys, Iowa's been such an offensive team. The model has Iowa's offense as better than their defense. I should have warned everyone. Everyone, are you sitting down? Okay, good. The model has Iowa's offense as better than their defense. Now, part of this is a little bit of injury relation. Part of this is maybe has Iowa found a better quarterback with, Cade McNamara out. A lot of people would suggest that. But it's been a team that looks competent finally offensively, defensively good. Maybe not, they've been so easily top 5. And so with that regard, I think this is being priced like this is old school Iowa. And if you watched Iowa at all this year, this is not old school Iowa. Also, UCLA, same thing. Last year, UCLA had no offense. It was all defense. We rode their unders hard. This year, totally new situation. And the offense has been scoring some points. As Cousin Jared, I think you're about to tell us more about. Again, over 44.5 B grade pick model thinks that we're about 4 points too low on this at this number. But Cousin Jared, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so you talked a lot about Iowa there. I have to say, Brendan Sullivan, I feel like is an upgrade at quarterback for them. Not that it took a lot to be better than what Cade McNamara had been doing. And Sullivan, maybe not a great passer, but he carried the ball for 60 yards, had a rushing touchdown in that game. Just gives the offense a dimension that I don't think that they've had in a while. Like the first name that comes to my mind, if I'm thinking Russian Iowa quarterbacks, I was like, do I have to go back to Brad Banks? Like in the early 2000s with the Iowa quarterback that could actually run. The other thing is, like, Caleb Johnson's not getting enough love for what he's doing this year. He's got, 1,100 yards and 19 touchdowns or something like that. So Iowa's offense has definitely been good. For me, this is just as much about UCLA. Ethan Garbers was banged up earlier in the season, and as he has gotten healthy, that UCLA
and terrible last year, but not this year.
No. Since he's gotten healthy this year, he's been playing a lot better. Of course, we're going over 44.5. We would like this a lot more at 44. I just don't know, as people dig into this, if we're ever going to see a 44. Not like you're really going to have a weather concern there either. So I just say, let's go ahead and jump on the 44.5, because 45 is almost just as important as 44.
You said we may not have any weather. I don't know. I watched an NFL game in Arizona where there was rain and hail on the game with the roof because they were so shocked about the weather. So you never know. Maybe weird weather things do happen. Seth, y'all stick to sides over there, so total's not really your thing. But I was obviously curious your take on this one.
Yeah, no, I agree with it. And you pointed out the UCLA has been a really interesting team. I think other than the two games you highlighted, they've covered every other game. So they're a really interesting team. Obviously went and did their thing against Nebraska last week, and Iowa overperformed as well. I agree 100% with your assessment. This does feel like a price of Iowa and UCLA old, and these teams are very much not that. So is the market still using priors too heavily for these two teams that are, kind of bucking those trends? I think it's a fair point. Now, at talking about the 44, the market actually did buy this back a little bit at both Bookmaker and Circa. Right now, you can get 44s. Now, retail books are not offering the 44 yet. They're leaving the hook. So, as this market gets more mature, though, that 44, if it sticks around there at Circa, should pop up at some of the retail books.
Yeah, I'd be curious when you said Circa specifically. I'm like, I wonder how long. Like, is it going to hold there or not? Right? Is it going to? Because if it holds there, that's going to say.
Yeah.
It's also Monday. It's also Monday night, right? So what will it say? If it holds there Thursday, it says Friday says a whole lot more than it does on a Monday night for sure.
It's only been that 44 has only been that way for about an hour and a half. So we'll see if it makes it through the night.
Unfortunately, I don't live in a circus state. I live next to one of them, and maybe next to two of them. And it's like they're like planning to be in the other one next to me, and so it's like they're gonna have my whole state surrounded. Obviously, I'd love for them to get to Indiana. Yeah. Again, we're gonna go under 44.
Over
44
it's
and a half.
Default. It's built into
default. I looked at the screen and I said, okay. How much of our money would we have put on under 44.5 on Iowa UC last year?
Yeah,
like
a lot of
300% of our money. Like I know that's not even possible. That's what it feels like we would have done at that number last year. But again, these two teams are very different. Shifting into Saturday, there are a handful of highly intriguing matchups. This is one of them, Florida and Texas. A little bit of the shine taken off of Florida's performance last week because of the injury to DJ Lagway. Like people are the final margin of victory or whatever, and all this. It's just a shame that injury happened because I think that could have been a really good game down the stretch. They had a chance there, and we've been I don't know. We talked about Florida last week. I don't know what else to say about them. We've been riding them. They've been really good to us. Texas, obviously, really good. This should be a fantastic contest, in my opinion, if we get a healthy DJ Lagway, which is, I have no idea at this point, right? It looked bad, and now today they're saying it's not as bad as they suspected, and he's going to be able to try to give it a go, that sort of thing. You never know what that means this early in the week. So if you're watching this later, maybe that'll mean something. But if Lagway plays, I think this might be closer than the line would indicate. Because 21.5 seems like a lot for this Florida team, but without Lagway, that's just a huge question mark. Instead, we're going to focus on the total. We think is kind of safe either way, or safer. Obviously, there's no locks in gambling, right? But we're going to go over 47. Your key numbers in the upper 40s, both 47 and 48. So getting the win on one, push on the other, a pretty good spot for us to be. We're projecting 52.5 is where it should be instead. Cousin Jared, why, when looking at, we could take all those points with Florida, but we don't know about Lagway. Why did you go to the over when we don't know about Lagway? Like, what was it that being a question mark made you say, this is what I want to lock in right now? I want to get this over, and rather than getting the 21 at a hook?
Yeah, I think the third stringer is going to be able to do a little bit more offensively with the whole week of practice if he does end up starting and playing a substantial amount of the game. So that's a big part of it. The other thing is that if Lagway doesn't play, for whatever reason, Texas dominates time possession. You see here, the number 4 rated offense. I think Texas is going to put up points. If Lagway plays, I think Florida's going to put up some points. So you and I actually talked about this earlier. I can't remember if it's kind of about this game, but the starting quarterback can affect the spread, but it doesn't always necessarily affect the total because obviously if you have a good starting quarterback and he plays, the total goes up. But if he doesn't play, usually that means the other team's going to possess the ball more and the other team will actually end up putting up more points. So that's kind of how I'm looking at this one. If Lagway goes, great. If Lagway doesn't go, I think Texas might have a field day. And of course, going over 47, so many key numbers that we're below at that 47 number.
Yeah, I always love this situation. We talked in the Discord a little bit about teasing NFL totals. We would never recommend teasing college totals, but NFL totals, we were talking about, could you get some of these really key numbers with how accurate the NFL model has been on totals, right? So it's not that we would tease this total necessarily, but I do love that it's like looking at that same thing where we think 52.5 and we're getting 47. It's like, man, 47, 48, 51, 52. That is just right there. And if that's the average kind of prediction, and in this case, we'll assume enough symmetry to say that the average and median are the same thing for those who would care. But for the one person watch this who'd be like, what about the median? That's what we really, I got you taken care of here. We're going to assume enough symmetry in this, but it's just as equally likely to get to the, the 55, 58, 59, that sort of stuff up there. So we have a lot of ways we can win this. Seth, what's your take on this total?
Yeah, we went back and forth. Our model really, really loves Florida in this spot. And like you said, we've actually been betting on Florida quite a lot. We went back and forth. We haven't pulled the trigger yet. And exactly what you were saying, it's up in the air on what's going to happen with Lagway. Obviously, if he's going to be in and healthy, then it's a great bet. I'd love to have this 21.5. The problem here is on the side, at least, basically everyone's going to probably rush to bet this the moment that we feel comfortable betting it based off the news. So it's like one of those things where do you try to basically just take a flyer now? Now, the one thing I do want to point out here, talking kind of about what you guys are talking about with these big Power 5 schools or Power 4 now, and these really, really, really well-recruited, high blue chip ratio college teams, Florida being one of them. We're talking about a team that has the 5th most blue chip ratio, recruits. Their third stringer is a very good quarterback relative to other teams. And obviously when he comes into a rivalry game in Jacksonville against Georgia, he's not going to be able to just go out there and light it up. But I thought he played with some poise for that situation. So I agree here that you may be able to even get some success out of Florida with their third stringer here. Obviously, you'd rather have Lagway. So we make the game 17 there on the side. I think the total can go either way. Do you guys adjust for injuries, or how do you guys handle something like this?
Yeah, with the player-based model, we it adjusts perfectly. Now, what we do with the guy like this is we have a lot of questionable designations, and we kind of put that as a 50-50, give that guy 50% and give the next man up, which in some cases, with viewers specifically going down, right, with Arch being behind him, I mean, it's half a point drop, maybe a point at most. I mean, you're not talking a big drop there. You've got a whole lot of talent behind them. But here, now going to the third string, at least with the lack of data we had, we were assuming a big drop. Now he plays, if he plays this one plays well, right? Maybe it's not. And that's, of course, the big uncertainty is we're guessing right now how much there's a drop with almost no data. It's just off of recruiting status, which I mean can be hit or miss by the time you get to college on your first game, right?
Yeah, high variance. It's tricky. I mean, hope is not a strategy. And I think if you play this, I think you're tending, at least the side for us, like you're tending a little bit too much on the hope side. But I have seen this over and over and over and over. These specific situations, Power 4 or Power 5 schools, backup quarterback, the market does seem to get those injuries a little bit wrong because that guy that's sitting behind him is a 4 or 5-star recruit. He was the man his whole life up until this point. He's only sitting because there's a guy that's slightly better than him ahead of him, and this could be a shot. So I don't know. I'm on the fence here, but the 21.5 is pretty enticing. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It really is. And you make a good point though. I always tell people this too, like, we're almost never, there's literally one time in my entire life where I got the injury news and I was able to get the bet in before the line moved. Literally one time. And it was a basketball game and it moved like 4 points and it lost anyway. Because that's just the way life goes, right?
Yeah, account, right?
Yeah. And, but like you said, we're very rarely ever in that position to do that. And so I always tell people, I say, look, my projection is my projection with it being what we know today. If we were to know something different tomorrow, my hunch is my line and the book's line is going to move relatively similar, right? Like you said, we may be undervaluing different situations. So maybe, but it's not like it's going to stay the same, right? Right now we've got it it's 16.3. And so kind of right where you've got it. And that's if the average of these two quarterbacks. But again, like you said, that third stringer might be pretty good, be able to step in. There's not a lot of game film on them. That could be a huge advantage, as well. Maybe, maybe it doesn't work out as well because Texas defense is good. I mean, there's just so much question marks there. But if they don't move the ball, Texas is going to score like 55.
Yeah. Hearing y'all talk about this, it may just be worth like half a unit on Florida at plus 21.5. If he doesn't play, then you know what, that's it. You put it on half a unit. And if not, maybe you could get it again at 17 if he's playing. I don't know. I'm just, after listening to y'all talk, that's just something I'm tossing around in my head.
Well, it's fair. And I guess maybe one thing also to analyze on this game is Florida has been the round robin of quarterbacks, right? You had Mertz, then Lagway, then back to Mertz, then back to Lagway. Now, obviously, we have very small sample size with this new guy, but I mean, it's not like your sample is like some, huge, just one guy, and then you have just like, 5 plays of this one other guy. It's kind of been this hodgepodge.
I mean, to be fair, our data on Lagway isn't as much as we'd like to have on
sure.
On
we only have
starting
quarterback season, right? So I don't know. I would suspect I will grab some of the 20.5. It just is too much. I think at minimum, even if Lagway doesn't play, I think this thing probably closes at 21, not 21.5.
Yeah.
That's my take.
I like your take there, Cousin Jared, mainly because I've done this on the flip. This is the flip side of this before with you a lot of times where I hear you talking. I'm like, I think we should make this play, like try to like get to, and it's I like you coming in and doing that for us.
Yeah.
As always, folks, though, remember, shop around as numbers move, right? Yeah. You get that extra half point, those extra 5 cents, etc. Make sure you have multiple betting accounts to look through. If you don't have an account there yet, BetUS is a great book to open up with. 150% bonus on your first ever deposit, 125% on the 2 following that. So again, always shop around, make sure you're getting the extra hooks if they are out there. That's the noon game there for Saturday, one of the main ones people will be paying attention to. At the 3:30 Eastern slot, Iowa State and Kansas. Iowa State losing to Tech. We had Tech. We took all the points. We love that. I even tweeted. I was like, hey, Tech might, of all the big dogs, like Tech might win. Didn't actually expect him to win it, though. That was a wild game.
In a dominant way.
And yes.
But still dominant. I guess scoreboard didn't really reflect that, but.
And with the weather elements, like going into Iowa State, like that's their weather. Like they're literally called the Cyclones, right? Like that is, Tech wants to play in 100-degree heat out in Lubbock, right? And that's their weather to get, it was in Iowa State's weather and getting that done. What does that say about Iowa State? I don't think it says much. I think it says what we've been saying all year. The Big 12 is insane. It's fun. It's just chaotic. Kansas exemplifies that on the other end of the spectrum, losing a ton of 1-score games, a 2-6 record, still holding on to hope for bowl eligibility. I think Kansas is playing okay. They just keep losing. We've still got them at number 40 in the country. This one, we've got Iowa State favored by about what the market does. And so we're going to pass on the side and go over 50.5 right on the south side of the key numbers 51 and 52 as we make it 57. Cousin Jared, what do you have for us?
As you mentioned there, I like this over 50.5 on the south side of all those key numbers. As you mentioned, we talked about Iowa a little bit earlier and how people are just kind of locked into their memories. Hey, Iowa's a defensive team. They don't realize how good the offense is. I feel like it's the same way with Iowa State, that Iowa State's always going to be a defense first team, but their offense is solid.
Right behind it.
Yeah, a good offense. The problem for Kansas's defense, not that great, especially by Power 4 standards. They can still win some games. You mentioned they're holding on to bowl eligibility. I don't think they're going to get it, but they have a chance because they're
really unlikely.
Yeah, but their offense is good enough to where if they could get some big plays from their defense, they could, maybe have a shot at that. So anyway, this is just, I feel like Iowa State's offense is underrated and Kansas's defense, as we know, just not that great.
Yeah, Seth, what do you have for us here?
Yeah, I could come to the very same conclusion. We don't model this out on the sides. We're same there as you guys and as the market. But I think this is kind of strength on weakness. I think both these teams are going to have success. Kansas, 7th best rushing EPA in our database. Iowa State, the 70th best or worst rushing defense. So, I mean, you have just good matchups all over the place here. So I think both these teams are going to be able to move the ball quite a bit.
Yeah, and that anybody can move the ball on Kansas, and it's like Kansas can move the ball on anybody. And it's not that simple, right? Because pace matters. Kansas has played very slow this year, which is interesting. A lot of times teams like with this good offense, bad defense, they just they play with their pants on fire. And so I think that the markets are treating this. I think they're looking at the pace and they're treating it correctly, but they're not quite factoring in this Iowa State offense should be able to have some success against Kansas, and Kansas, like you said, good matchup against Iowa State defense.
Yeah, and I was surprised by this in our database. Points per equal, right? So again, an equal is defined as getting to the 40 or better. Points per equal, so how many points are you getting on those equals? They're 7th in our database. They're kind of flying under the radar, even by my numbers. That's top 10 offense right there for, So
yeah,
I'm with you.
Yeah, and like I said, the model has their offense right behind, and they were not as bad as Iowa, obviously, with Iowa last year being 100th in offense and first in defense, right? It wasn't that bad, but like I said, it's been a team that's in the last 10 years has usually had a good defense and usually had a questionable offense, and their offense is a little bit higher. And we think the books are missing on that, and so we're going to go over 50.5, also at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, a game that everybody will be having their eyes on. According to Sideline, the top 2 teams in the country, number 1 and number 2, in Georgia, Ole Miss. Ole Miss kind of tied at second place with like 5-6 other teams there. And it's like a shuffle every week as to who's occupying some of these spots at the top. It's just so much parity at the top relative to what we've had in recent years. There is obviously a lot to discuss in this game because, Jared, I'll just let you take over right from the top here. One of our top plays is over 54.5 as we're projecting an average of 61 points. Why was that our favorite play in this game?
Well, as always, 55, the most common outcome in college football games. So being able to go over 54.5 is very important. I'm kind of struggling with how to articulate this. And so maybe, 2 guys that are statisticians could help me out here. But I feel like both of these teams, Ole Miss especially, going forward on 4th down, they're always trying to maximize their number of points scored, whatever their, enhance their win expectancy. And so I always like betting overs in Ole Miss games, not to mention the fact that, Lane Kiffin knows this is 54.5. So he's definitely got 55 pegged.
He's got it circled on it.
Yeah, he's got to get this game at 55. The other thing with Georgia is, are the Carson Beck turnovers going to stop? He has not been able to stop from throwing it to the other team as of recent. The thing is, if you do that enough with Ole Miss, like, they're going to put some points on the board, especially with what I just mentioned about always trying to maximize your points per possession as it is. So, Georgia's offense outside of the turnovers, still good. So I see both teams acting in a manner that's going to get points on the board. I guess that seems very obvious to say, but I hope my examples kind of illustrate that a little bit more.
I think, yeah, I get what you're saying. It does almost sound like you said both teams are going to try to score points. That's not what you said, but that's almost what I heard.
That is what I said.
But they're going to try to score points, and thus we think there's going to be points. It's that simple sometimes, folks. Yeah. Seth, what do you got for us?
Yeah, just to put some numbers behind that, Jared, I couldn't agree more here. Georgia is throwing the ball 12% more than an average team. Ole Miss is throwing 7% more than average team. And then again, points per equal, one of our favorite stats. Georgia's 24th in the nation, Ole Miss 27th in the nation. So these are teams that are going to drive and they're going to pay those off with touchdowns. And usually in our database, we like to hone in on teams that are passing a lot, because in college, teams that are passing a lot and have high success rates usually are teams that cover and do more. And both these teams are that archetype. So yeah, I think it does support quite a lot of points. We make this number -4 for Georgia. So teeny bit of value there, but not enough for us to actually pull the trigger on it.
All right. The last thing I want to say on this game is some people might look at the screen there and see Southern having Ole Miss as number 1 defense in the country. Now their pace is number 5. So they're going to give up points because there are just a lot of plays in Ole Miss games, but the model really likes their defense, really likes what it brings to the table here. And they're also partially the number 1 defense. Again, it's a player-based model that accounts for injuries. And so that's something, of course, to keep in mind too, is that this is not necessarily saying they have been the best, but they project to be the best going forward right now. And again, while that is good, they're going up against the number 1 offense. We love this Georgia offense. So really, it's not about offense versus defense. It's about just good offenses, and good offenses in college football tend to score points. An average number of points in this game would be 55, and boom, we've got the winner. That's why we're going over 54.5 with one of our top plays. Shortly after this one starts 4 p.m. Eastern, Colorado at Texas Tech. I feel like at this point, with Colorado, we've acknowledged, they're a very good team, a lot of talent, all the, Deion haters, with regards to it's getting results, and that's imperative for them. We aren't that down on Tech. I know that people have gotten down on Tech, but we talked last week about why you took points with them against Iowa State. It was like, this might be a decent team. They got crushed by Baylor. Baylor looks pretty good right now. Tech was, a botched fumble away from, having beaten TCU as well. They're at home. We think this is a coin toss game. Colorado, the better team. But in Lubbock, one of the toughest places to play in college football, we're going to take plus 155 with Tech. Just too good odds to pass up. Cousin Jared, what's your take on this Big 12 clash?
Tech's been a better team at home this year, except for that one Baylor game, which, if anybody could explain what got into Baylor's offense in that game, I would love to hear it. This just, like you said,
I could tell you that they woke up and scored all the touchdowns they forgot to score earlier in the season.
Okay, well,
and they just all came in that game.
Yeah. I walked into that one. So I think I agree with what you said. This is just a toss up, plus 150, plus 155, whatever we're getting here. And I don't think this is going to happen because Colorado has had the microscope on them from day one. But I don't know if y'all were reading all the stuff that I was reading this past weekend, but it was like, who was the biggest winner on this weekend in college football? And everybody said Colorado, even though they didn't play, because now they have a great opportunity ahead of them to actually make it to the Big 12 Conference Championship game. So I don't think that's going to get to them, but they do kind of have that tossing around their head now, just some added pressure, I think, to perform and actually get there. So, take it home. Give me the big plus odds.
Colorado, like you said, the big winner on a game they didn't play. On a day they didn't play just because it was like there was chaos. In the Big 12 in a wild weekend. Seth, how do y'all model this one out?
Yeah, we are aligned here. We make the number Texas Tech -3, so we're agreeing that there's a ton of value on the money line there. You could even argue there's some value on the spread if you want. It looks like it's now moved to 3.5, so it's headed in the direction of getting more value. The early market's disagreeing, but I'm with you here. I'm taking a look under the hood, though. The numbers, although the model is obviously going to be smarter than me and my brain in this situation, but looking at the numbers, I will say this: it's a bit concerning. I think Colorado is extremely one-dimensional. They love to throw the ball. A team that's throwing the ball 14% more than an average team, given the same down distance, that's pretty highly levered. The only concern I have, Texas Tech, 113th EPA per pass on defense. So they're going to have to figure that out. But again, if they do, or even alter that, ever so slightly, Colorado is just going to not have a lot of options. They dropped to the 92nd best rushing team. So, I mean, they're just going to fall off a cliff. So yeah, we're aligned here. Our model makes something very similar. So a lot of value there on the money line, and it'll be interesting. I agree with the angle here. And it sounds like maybe, do you guys have that Baylor bet? We were on +2. We were, I don't know if you guys were in that game.
TCU?
No, Baylor versus Colorado.
Oh, in Colorado. That was so long ago. I don't even know. Yeah. Do you remember what we had? I feel like we probably
no. I want to say we were on Colorado. I think I'll need to go double check.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Then it was an exciting night for you. It was a painful one.
Well, as a Baylor
Hail Mary,
it was not exciting for me.
Yeah. Last play of the game, Hail Mary. They it's a whole thing. But yeah. Colorado's been an interesting team.
They really have. This could turn into an old school shootout. So I'm just going to throw that out there for the people. The model doesn't necessarily lead one way or the other. There's a reason the total is 63, I guess is what I'll say. But this could be an old school Big 12 shootout. Like you said, Colorado passes the ball. Tech can give up passes. We saw that against Baylor, and Tech's offense can get going. And this could just be an old school shootout. And this is where I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm curious if either one of you guys have a take on this. Again, splitting your bet, taking a little bit of 3.5, a little bit of the money line. I mean, my thought would be, if Tech has a performance like they did against Baylor, against Colorado, I'd rather have the money line because I'm risking less. I have a higher payout or whatever. If they lose big, that's my take. But do either one of y'all advocate for taking a little bit of the 3.5 in case it's a close game in Lubbock?
I don't really trust either of these teams to play close games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less concerned. Maybe in the NFL, I would be more apt to do that. I think with college, you're just getting so much volume. It sounds like you guys are the king of volume. So, like, sample size here is your friend. Like, you're gonna get to bet 50 more of these money lines. So, like, your variance should be a little bit less here. So, I think you're just maximizing your edge taking the money line here.
Yeah, ooh, I like that. And the other thing you mentioned about the NFL, if this is an NFL game, I'd be more likely to take the 3.5 because those games just are almost always close, right? There's so much value on the 3 there, whereas in college, like the 3 doesn't. It's not that it doesn't have value. It's just not the same as it is in the NFL.
It's very different, key number. I mean, the key numbers are the same, but there's distributions. Look,
the math probability. Yeah. Man, we've gotten deep into the nerd woods here.
Yeah, I'll just let y'all go
to the night game here. Alabama and LSU, 7:30 Eastern kickoff. We've got this Alabama by 10.4. When I'm looking at this, obviously I see a situation where the market thinks that it opened too low, is out to 3 at this point. I don't know where it's going, if it'll continue to go. So you think other people are thinking along the same lines as us, but that 10.4 number, when I see something that far out, right? To one extent, I don't want to overthink it or worry about it, right? I have my own system, my own data. It's not meant to try to predict what the line will be. And I'm going to have some outliers. And if I didn't have outliers, that would almost be proof of a bad statistical process. This one's a little bit out there with regards to where the market sits at this moment. I'm trying to figure out why is that. And to me, I think the bottom line is our model just doesn't really believe in LSU that much. Offense outside the top 10, barely. Really good offense. Defense at number 40. Not that they're a bad team, but it's interesting to me that we don't have that top, what's been in the past 1, 2, 3 teams that are just amazingly better than everybody. We have this bigger chunk at the top, but that doesn't mean there's not a drop off. According to Sideline, once you get past that top, whatever it is, 7 teams, it's like the difference between 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. So it's like a whole point on each one. Like there's a big spread there down to once you get to around number 20, according to the model, that the parity has made it where there's just more at the top, but there still is that gap. So that's really where I think we're coming from this. Because Jared, what are you coming at seeing a number like Alabama -10 saying, hey, I only have to lay a number like 3? Where's your head at?
Yeah, well, the first place my head goes is LSU can't run the ball. They are extremely one-dimensional, and they are, of course, still good enough against some of the SEC competition where that's not a problem. Against Alabama, that's going to be a problem. I would also say maybe LSU's defense is a little bit better than what Sideline has given them credit for. They started off the season not too great. They have played better as of late, but that does not explain the 7 points difference that we're seeing here, even if Sideline is underrating LSU's defense a little bit. I am all for taking the money line in these situations and just paying the extra, bit there to not have to worry about what the final score is. Just let Alabama win. I'm going to say lay the 3 points here because I do not think that laying that extra 30 cents, 40 cents, whatever it is good value for a night game in Baton Rouge. Like if Alabama wins this game, if Alabama wins this game, if they win by 3, fine. Okay, we'll push. I think it's more likely Alabama wins by 7 or 10, and I get to cash that. I don't want to be on pins and needles when it's the fourth quarter and LSU's driving and they're doing LSU things like they did last time they played Alabama in Baton Rouge. So normally I'm all for the money line, but not game in Baton Rouge. I don't think that it's worth that extra bit there for that bit of certainty.
Seth, how do y'all view this game?
Yeah, I come bearing gifts. So, Jared, put some numbers there. LSU in our database, 21st best passing offense, 111th best or worst.
I would not have thought 111. Wow.
Yeah. So,
that is crazy.
Poor. Yeah. And it's more concerning, or it's more perplexing, right? Because this is an SEC team. They should be able to recruit, but that's for a different time. But to bring more gifts, our model makes this number 9. So we are not too far off.
Wow.
We tend to regress our number to the market because the market is, there are people betting things other than models. They're betting news, they're betting all this other stuff. So we would we would call the true number 6, but our raw model number is 9. So we're pretty much right there. And we've had a lot of success in these big spots where we feel the data are really robust. We'll bet some alts. Now this number is a little more difficult because there's not really a lot of sexy alts here. I guess you could go after a 9.5.
9.5, yeah.
And you'll get some fairly plus money. But I mean,
we've for something that we might say is in the realm of 50-50.
Yeah. And the market's pricing in. So Jared, I don't think you need to go money line. I think you're fine at the 3. We gave out 2 and a 2.5 at open to our clients, and I mean, like the 3 obviously, but I think there's still more value to be had. I think this will continue to move. Now, where it stops, I just the way a market works, I don't think this thing is going to go through a 7. I think there'll be support at some point for LSU, just from
Right.
some other approach from some other person or
home game for LSU at night.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of
gonna,
reasons, right? Yeah. But yeah, we're completely aligned here, and I'm with you. I mean, to put some more numbers on this, another thing we look at is weighted EPA. So we like to say we let the data tell us what types of plays are more correlated with winning and covering, and we upweight those or downweight them if they're less correlated. And Alabama is 10th defensively, and LSU drops to 64th overall. So I mean, this is a team, again, it's got its struggles on offense, specifically rushing, but defense, it's difficult to envision how they're actually going to slow Alabama down.
Yeah, it's I don't know. My brain, I'm just thinking, Nick Saban's going to find a way to scheme up and blah, 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 right? And whatnot. But it's been, I don't want to say they haven't missed a step, obviously, without Saban there. But while Alabama's had their question marks, every team in college football's had their question marks, they still are a very, very good team. And that's, I think, what we're kind of all seeing here from a modeling standpoint is that these very good teams are a decent bit better than the ones 10 below them, which, maybe hasn't been quite as much the case in years past.
They've looked like a very good college football team. Before they were like a robot. They were a machine. They were not real. Like that Vanderbilt game literally never happened with Saban throughout the entire, course of his tenure there. But, they look just like Ohio State now. They look just like, Clemson did 3 or 4 years ago. They look like a really, really good college football team.
It was just as an anecdote, I was at the Tennessee-Alabama game, and we were in the stands, and I can tell you being there, pretty much 95% of that game, it felt like Alabama was going to win the game. The crowd was not loud at all. And then it was like the last 5 minutes, it was like all of a sudden like, oh, wait, like somehow we might win this game. And then everyone went crazy, and then they ended up winning. Tennessee ended up winning. But it was like, if you look, you're like, what happened? They felt like they were in control. It felt like it was just really weird. And so I think it was that being in the minds here of bettors, like, I don't know what to make of that, but like, Alabama's coming off. No, they're not. Are they coming off a bye? Did they play last week?
I honestly don't
remember. I can't remember. I can't recall. It all blends together. But
it so blends together.
But I mean,
I think they were both on a bye last week.
Yeah. So I mean, going to LSU at night. I mean, obviously, SEC night game is a big deal. Everyone seems to always have a problem doing. One team always gets. I don't know if you even can call this an upset of the 3-point spread, but but we're with you here. Alabama, I think, is as far as when we're talking about value, good bets. I think Alabama is a good bet. Whether it wins or loses, I couldn't tell you, but Alabama's.
Hey, that's what we always say, right? We don't have one game I cannot predict. I don't know what's going to happen, and we're going to say something, and it's going to lose by like 30 because that happens. But that's
sign me up.
It's like you said, it's the long-term value of this. We like Alabama again laying the 3. Don't know how high it'll get, but a lot of 3s obviously still going to hold a lot of value and hold for at least a little bit, it seems like. Again, if you are looking to support the show, you can sign up with us on Dub Club. We have a picks only package, $20 per month. Just the picks, no extra details. Again, check that out. Promo codes, all that stuff in the link description. So just a quick reminder about that before we head to our last game of the weekend that we're going to cover here, Washington and Penn State. Cousin Jared, to me, this one is fairly simple. It is that we've long talked about Penn State taking care of business against the teams that are below them and struggling with Ohio State and Michigan. Michigan's not Michigan this year, but they struggled with Ohio State just like they always have. No different than any other year. And what does that mean? A team that's 50th overall in the country is going to come into Happy Valley and probably get crushed. We're going to lay the 13.5 with Penn State. We've got it at 20.5. Cousin Jared, what you got for us?
So I will acknowledge letdown spot for Penn State here. Body blow game, all the things that we like to talk about. What I think can overcome that is a Washington team traveling across the country for approximately the umpteenth time this season. And I think that it was funny before we came on the show. We were like, oh, we don't really talk about individual players that much. I think Will Rogers gets too much credit there in Washington, and especially on the road. Like Washington's offense just has not been able to get going on the road this season. They played a little bit better at home, but on the road specifically, I just do not have any confidence at all in Washington's offense being able to go into Penn State and do anything. So maybe this game is close for the first half, but I think in the end, Penn State pulls away and wins it by 17-20, to your point, just about like they do any other Big Ten school that's not Ohio State at this point.
Yep. Seth, how do y'all see it?
Yeah, we're more good news. We make this number 18 in favor of Penn State, so we see a lot there. One of the things that stood out, just to give you some data behind it, one of the, again, I've hit this stat a lot. I really like it, and I model. I guess it's just part of it, but they're 128th in points per equal, so they just do not finish drives. I think Penn State here. You bring up the letdown spot, Jared. I think that is a fair concern. The one thing I would point out, this is the new era of football and college football. This team is poised to be a playoff team. If they win out, they will make the playoffs, in my opinion. So this is, let's focus on that rather than, this big upset, because it's no longer one and done. There's no longer like let the air out of the tires. Now you got to, you have a chance here to go and do something still. So I wonder if that means anything, or are these still, at the end of the day, college kids, and something like that just does take the wind out of your sails, so to speak. But I mean, Penn State right now is slated to be one of the playoff teams.
It's also the wideout game, so that's probably going to get the kids going. Yeah.
Mo Bamba, just play it on repeat.
Yeah.
And I'll point out, last year, Penn State, after their losses to Ohio State and Michigan, won those two games by an average of 15 points. We're laying 13.5 here. But if you go back 2 years ago, the week after they lost to Michigan and Ohio State, because again, this is like literally every year what happens, they won those games by a combined score of 90-31. So they've historically been, this is the week after, there's no bye week. Like, they constantly lose a game to a really good Big Ten team and come back the next week and win a game, right? This is just their thing. They're trustworthy in that regard, kind of like Iowa has been. So again, we're going to lay the 13.5 with Penn State to wrap up our show. A great pick there. More picks for the late games, more top plays, all sorts of other goodies over there on Dub Club. So just a quick reminder there. Before we sign off, Seth, do you have parting words for the viewer?
No, I just want to say thanks so much for having me, and to keep up all the good work. And to any of the viewers, I commend you for, watching and consuming good content of people that are trying to put you on the pathway of actually at least making good bets. Well, making money and all this stuff is like, that's the goal, of course. But when you're on the internet and you're seeing touts, like, it's not about Lambos. It's more about math. It's about price. The more you can be price sensitive, the better. When people say to shop the line, that's exactly what they're saying, right? You can alter your break even just by shopping the line. So that's, I'm just commend people for consuming content like this. And if you find this stuff interesting, come check us out, BTB Analytics. We do a ton of this type of content, and we hope to see you over there. But I couldn't thank you guys enough for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And because we always talk about a lot of these topics, of course. And it was something he said there. I was thinking about the goal, and I don't know. You and I've had discussions before multiple years ago, right? How do you, sometimes you change your goals, right? Sometimes your goal starting off needs to be just to break even, right? How do you get to that point? Yeah. We've all been there at some point, and then how do you up that and up that and up that? But, having that realistic goal, of course, although a Lamborghini does sound nice if we could somehow.
Sure. There's levels to it, right?
Yeah, of course. Because Jared, parting words from you.
Oh my God, college basketball season's here. No other place is going to give you a breakdown of 114 games on Monday night, except here with the professor here giving you his notes, his picks, his projections.
I was afraid that file wouldn't send out today. It was so long with all those notes.
Yeah. So obviously, still lots of college football and NFL content to go, but we are getting into the swing of college basketball early.
At least the night started off good in college basketball for night one. Yeah. I have no idea what's happened as we've recorded this. Hopefully, it's finished well. With 114 games, you can get up like 7, 8, 9 games or whatever, and just be like, I have no idea how the night's going to play out. Still, like,
so much volume.
So much volume in college basketball. So again, if you like that, you can check that out. We have a college basketball only package. We have a, college football only package. And we have, of course, you can get everything or just the picks. A lot of options over there on Dub Club. We thank you for watching, viewer, as always. We wish you the best of luck and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.